He was there to learn the Egyptian mysteries, the ancient mysteries. From who? From Thoth the Atlantean.
Thoth the Atlantean, because he knows. Trust me, bro. One of the guys that has recently just been all over my feed, so frustratingly annoying, Billy Carson. I'm just going to play a video. I'm just going to tell you, like, how do you reason through this stuff? What do we do? Because he's everywhere. And look, to a certain extent, I want to blame people, but I get how this stuff works because I don't know what the best way. Like, I want to blame Joe Rogan. I want to blame Patrick Bet-David. I like both those guys because it's like, why do you have someone like Billy Carson coming on your shows saying the dumbest things that you can possibly say, and then you don't have any way of fact-checking them live? Like, you don't have the information to be like, hey, that's not true or something like that. When he makes a claim, I'm one of the best cuneiform, whatever, tablet readers, just give him a cuneiform thing and say, can you please read this? If he's talking about ancient manuscripts, give him a Greek New Testament, tell him to read it. You'll know whether he knows Greek or Hebrew and whether he can read that, instead of just making these claims. These guys are not experts in that, right? Whether Rogan, PBD, or whomever else. Those are two guys I watch regularly. You need people that can think through the information that's being spoken about, because some of these podcasts are like 3-4 hours long, and can deal with it, or else he just sounds right. There's a Bible passage in the book of Proverbs that says, I'm paraphrasing here, but essentially, when you only hear one side of when you only hear one side of a debate, that side seems right till you hear the other side. That's a proverb. It's basic logic that you need all the information to make up your mind. I get the internet's talking about these people. I get these guys are trending and you want to get onto that. Watch what's being said here about Jesus. Now, if I brought someone on who was a nuclear physicist, a subject I have no idea about, I would just ask him a bunch of questions and maybe try to reason through it and ask them, hey, what about this? Because you do research on your guests. You know who your guests are. You ought to be doing research and know whether they're saying wacky stuff or actually like decent stuff. You have to have the right questions. And they're saying very plain and simple wrong things. Check it out.
Jesus disappears out of the modern day Bible at the age of 12. Where does he go? He ends up in Egypt. And
okay, the timeline is off. Very simply put, if you read the Bible, this guy's timeline is off. Number one, Jesus goes to Egypt right when Herod the Great is killing the babies. When Jesus is a child, the wise men come to him. So the wise men come, they essentially end up running away because of the babies being killed, and they go to Egypt. And then they come back sometime later, and Jesus grows up in Israel. This guy's timeline is off. This guy says Jesus at 12 years old goes to Egypt. The Bible doesn't say that. The Bible says Jesus grew up when he's 12 years old, he goes to the temple. And then it tells us he submitted to his parents and grew in stature and knowledge before men and God. That's what the text says. But this dude, because he's talking to a largely ignorant audience, biblically illiterate, ignorant audience, can just spew off anything that comes to his mind, trying to be as gracious as I can. So here's what he said. He says Jesus at 12 years old goes to Egypt.
He was there to learn the Egyptian mysteries, the ancient mysteries. From who? From Thoth the Atlantean.
Thoth the Atlantean, because he knows. Trust me, bro.
Then from there, he left and went to Tibet to learn Qigong and Reiki. And that was confirmed by the Dalai Lama.
Okay, so here's, again, if I was having an interview with this guy, I would stop him and say, hey, listen, hang on, Billy, who cares what the Dalai Lama has to say on the subject? Did the earliest followers of Jesus say that he did those things? The Dalai Lama is not a contemporary of Jesus. The Dalai Lama can say whatever the heck he wants to say, right? But here's the weird, and this is what I mean, here's the weird conspiratorial thing about this, is that he's going to say, but what you don't know, I'm being tongue-in-cheek here, is that the Dalai Lama and the monks have secret knowledge that they've kept from the world. And in their secret knowledge writings that only a couple of us have access to, and he definitely has access to because he's the Dalai Lama, it says that Jesus went and studied with them and learned this stuff and then came back. Look at this claim he makes.
And then also he left from there and he went to India to learn the mystic arts, teaching reincarnation all the way back. The next thing
Jesus teaching reincarnation all the way back. Show me one thing in the Bible. And when I say the Bible, I'm treating it as a historical document. I'm just treating it as a historical document That's the earliest documentation we have. Secular scholars will tell you this. Conservative scholars will tell you this. Like, I'm not saying anything weirdly out there. Show me anything in the New Testament where the students of Jesus, even if we just take the Gospels, where the Gospels teach reincarnation. Again, this is a very simple question you ask to someone like this who makes these claims. Jesus taught reincarnation. Like, where?
Jesus and the God of the Bible says, I call my son out of Egypt. And then he appears riding in on the back of a donkey as a grown man.
Okay, I watched a number of videos where he specifically makes this same claim over and over again, that Jesus went to Egypt at 12 years old, and then the Bible says, I call my son out of Egypt, and he's riding in on a donkey as a grown man. That just tells me you've never even read the Gospels. You haven't even read one of the Gospels. Why? Why can I make a statement like that, right? Because Jesus rides in on a donkey towards the end of the Gospels, because that's the triumphal entry into Jerusalem as Messiah, as King. So for about 3 years before that event, and then Jesus' last week transpires of his life. Like, he rides in on the donkey the last week of his life. For 3 years before that, he's doing, let's just say about 3 years, he's doing ministry. He's preaching and teaching, and he's doing all these things. It's not that it says, I call my son from Egypt, and then immediately the next scene is Jesus going into Jerusalem on a donkey. This guy's timeline is so off that the only reasonable conclusion I can come to is that he doesn't know what he's talking about. He has very little knowledge about what he's talking about, but he talks confidently. And again, if you might be someone who's watching this and say, hey, Arthur, maybe you don't know what you're talking about. That's fine. Go read the New Testament and see when Jesus rides into Jerusalem on a donkey, and when Jesus goes to Egypt, and when the Bible says, I've called my son out of Egypt, which is, again, that's Israel in the Old Testament. And then the New Testament uses that about Jesus, but it uses it earlier in his life, not when he's 30-something years old, because he did this weird, went to India and China, wherever, the East, let's just say. I know it's mystic. They got all this stuff. And then came back to Egypt and then came through, because he's got to stick him into the Egyptian context so he can say, oh, look, Jesus was learning all this mystic stuff from African ancestors.